Hi, everybody. Welcome to Game Day U. I'm Madeline Roberts. This is Kyle Payne.
How's it going?
And Sam Brown. We're super excited for the first show of the football season. Guys, are you excited?
Oh, yes. I'm so happy football season is back. It has been a long summer.
I've been waiting since football season ended for the new football season to start. Yep. That's how excited I am.
So which game are you most excited for today? I mean, I know obviously OU plays, but other than that, are there any games you're looking forward to? Or is it just all OU UTEP today?
I mean,
until like 5 o'clock when the OU game ends, that's all I'll be thinking about. But yeah. I think Alabama, Florida State tonight obviously has the potential to be awesome. 1-3 playing first week of the season. Be awesome to see Jalen Hurts, how Alabama looks with the new OC. Be a good game.
Kind of an underrated game too, Florida and Michigan. I'm really excited to see what they do at quarterback Florida. They announced that Felipe Franks is going to be the starter, but they also said that Luke Del Rio and Malik Zaire might be used as well during the game because it's not a set starter. Yeah. And, I mean, Jim Harbaugh's young team has a chance to capitalize on that. Jim Harbaugh, the podcast genius, has a new podcast coming out.
Who do you have in that game?
I'm going to go – my gut tells me to go with Michigan. Just because it's Jim Harbaugh.
Go with Michigan.
It's Jim Harbaugh. He knows how to take advantage of a situation like this. He's got the defense ready. A defense that lost a lot of starters when you talk about guys like Taco Charlton, Jordan Lewis.
Jabril
Peppers, I mean, going to Cleveland in the draft. But they've got a ton of guys. They recruited really well. Jim Harbaugh is a recruiting genius. And he's got guys from all over the country just pouring in. Wilton Spate at quarterback, supposedly, we're not sure.
Yeah, is he playing?
He's supposed to be the starter today.
Yeah.
They talked on ESPN. There's an interview this week where he talked about the atmosphere and how he wanted to stay calm and show his teammates to stay calm. So I think that it's kind of assumed he's going to be the starter. But I mean, John O'Corn and then the impressive freshman Harris, I think is his name, both have a chance to start. Obviously, the quarterback battle kind of came out of nowhere and extended all the way until a couple weeks ago, I think.
Not a bad issue to have multiple quarterbacks that you trust going into week one.
No, absolutely not. I mean, that's what Florida has. They have little three teams. I'm not sure who exactly they trust yet, but I think that's what they're going to find out. If Felipe Franks the freshman can ride his arms, stay composed in a big atmosphere like this game, who knows? He might be the starter for the rest of the year.
Could be, yeah. All right, well, you'll hear from us a little later, but right now we're going to toss to a live crew who's in the OU's new residential colleges right in front of the stadium.
Thank you, Madeline. Well, we are here at the new residential colleges at the University of Oklahoma, right in front of the Gaylord Memorial Stadium. Welcome to Game Day U. I'm Joseph Quinton. Good morning. Thank you for tuning in. And we're back. We are back at Game Day U, and I am back with the veteran team. We got redshirt senior Carson Williams over here and the two seniors. Yeah. Reagan Ledbetter and Kenneth Adair. It's another year, another season of football. How are you two feeling? How are you three feeling, my bad?
I'm feeling good. You know, early Saturday morning, we're back at it. Got the nice stadium behind us. Football's back. College football's back. We've already had a couple, blowout games these past couple days, and we'll get into that here in a little bit. But I'm excited for the new season, a new era for OU football, and ready to get it underway.
It's the longest stretch of months throughout the year is those months without college football.
Yeah.
And it's finally back. We're finally able to watch football again. Thursday night was awesome. And I'm excited. I mean, OU, with Lincoln Riley, like you said, coming in, it's a new era for OU football. All I've ever known since I've been a kid is Bob Stoops.
Yeah.
And now it's something new. The weather's cooling down a little bit, which means fall's coming, which means football.
Yeah, we had a nice little shower come in earlier this morning, but it does feel like game day. We had good games Thursday, good games Friday, but Saturday is what it's meant for. And so
big slate. It is college football season when you are walking around.
Sorry about those technical difficulties. Hopefully we'll be able to go back to that crew again. But guys, they were just talking about how there was a couple good games on Thursday night.
Yeah.
First game, Oklahoma State, Tulsa. What were your thoughts on that game?
I think Oklahoma State looked really good. I mean, the offense looked dynamic, just as we expect. Mason Rudolph, who threw for 303 yards, 3 touchdowns.
20 of 24
Only 4 incompletions,
Yeah, that's insane.
Added another touchdown on the run. I mean, he's got weapons on weapons on weapons. At the running back position, Justice Hill.
He tore it up.
Yeah, the freshman, J.D. King.
He's going to be good this year.
J.D. King, who scored on his second career carry. And then the other freshman, LaDarren Brown, who also tagged on 95 yards and another TD. They both looked really good. And, I mean, the wide receiver core is so deep when you got Tyron Johnson, James Washington, Marcel Aitman, Jalen McCluskey, who actually really disappointed the other day. But, I mean, their offense is so deep that they can go up with any other team in the country in terms of points.
It's scary to watch them. That offense really does flow. I think Mason Rudolph knows that this season is a big deal for OSU. Mike Gundy just got paid, so the OSU's looking to come out and really compete this year. And Mason Rudolph looks so good. James Washington is terrifying, too.
Oh,
I'm not looking forward to that game.
Yeah.
Do you think the defense is for real? I mean, they've hyped up their defense this year, but, I mean, what do you think?
I think it remains to be seen. I think Tulsa's not a huge opponent. They've got a tough test at Pittsburgh next week, maybe an upset alert to look out for. But, I mean, that's going to be the first big test, and their defense is going to be the key for them this year in terms of competing in the Big 12, where it's just points on points. Their defense needs to step up. You saw it with OU's defense, how they've changed the system. It will be interesting to see how OSU adapts. And there just seems to be a lot of hype around transfers. And Ramon Richards playing switch from corner to safety to start the season.
He was good.
They said he looked really good. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah, I think the crazy thing about the Big 12 is that we can say that teams need to work on their defense, but if you can score 60 points every week, you always have a chance to win.
That's true.
There aren't a lot of defenses in the Big 12 that are going to be able to slow down that offense at all.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's the same thing with Oklahoma last year. When you looked at in the Big 12, they were dropping 40 points a game on a regular basis. Like, it was nothing.
Yeah,
No one could stop them because of all the weapons they had. And OSU is essentially that same format. They've got a great quarterback in Mason Rudolph, who's going to be a great NFL prospect with size, strength, accuracy, really can play in that system. And, I mean, just all the weapons that they have remind you of Samaje Perine and Joe Mixon and D.D. Westbrook last year. So, I mean, it'll be interesting to see how far they can take it.
Yeah.
That's true. So, the other game, Thursday night, Ohio State, Indiana. The first half looked kind of bad for Ohio State. What were your thoughts on that game, Kyle?
Yeah, it was crazy to watch them get outplayed by Indiana for 30 minutes a game. I mean, Ohio State is hyped up this year. J.T. Barrett coming back again. Their offense looks good. They lost a ton on defense, but
their secondary is depleted.
J.T. Barrett, I mean, he turned it on in the second half, but he really did struggle for the first half, and that was kind of weird to see.
It's weird. They didn't look like the Ohio State team you'd expect to come out and dominate Indiana. Like you said, the secondary, who got depleted a lot, lost players like Marshawn Lattimore, Malik Hooker out in the draft, Gary Conley too. And they said that they'd had prospects come in that are supposed to be really good, really hyped up, really impressive, and you didn't see that a lot. I mean, Richard Lego came out of nowhere. The senior set the record for pass attempts. 65 pass attempts. And I mean, he looked good. He made some bad decisions, which led to those 2 interceptions in the first and the second half. He had 1 in each. But, I mean, he looked impressive, and their wide receiving core looked really good, too.
Most telling stat, I think, of that first half is last season, Ohio State did not allow more than 265 passing yards in a single game. Indiana eclipsed that in that first half.
Yeah.
So that just shows how far Ohio State's secondary needs to go if they really want to compete.
You have to feel like Ohio State is worried about their secondary when Indiana is throwing the ball 65 times. I mean, they decided that they were going to pass, and they stuck to it the whole game. And pretty much until midway through the third quarter, it looked like Indiana had total control over the ball game.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
And I mean, J.T. Barrett just didn't look like the Heisman contender we expect him to. He struggled with accuracy throughout the game, picked it up towards the end, but he had a lot of open guys. And I'm telling you,
they scored 29 unanswered.
Yeah,
J.T. Barrett he did pick it up.
He picked it up, but like he also had a lot of open guys. I mean, J.K. Dobbins and Paris Campbell were easily the best players on that field. J.T. Barrett wasn't. J.K. Dobbins filled in for Mike Weber, who hurt his hamstring, and they just chose to rest him and prepare him for next week against OU.
180 yards.
180 yards off the bench, set the freshman record, or like broke the school record for most yards by a freshman in his first game. And I mean, Paris Campbell, that little crossing route, he just caught it, cut up the field, and just broke loose. And
both of them are so fast.
Yeah, Paris Campbell reminded me a lot of Curtis Samuel, who just left them last year and got drafted by Carolina. Just an explosive back who is a combination of size and power and speed. He's going to be impressive to watch.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So you talk about J.T. Barrett, great quarterback, Heisman contender. Who's some other quarterbacks that you think could be Heisman contenders or people to watch this year?
There are a lot of good quarterbacks this year. Lamar Jackson coming off that Heisman Trophy. I mean, I think Louisville has a chance to be really good. He's so dynamic. Just like him, Quentin Flowers from USF. He didn't look that great against San Jose State.
No, he didn't.
He's one of the most dynamic players in all of college. And with Charlie Strong coming in there, I think he has a chance to take them all the way to a Big Six game, at least.
Yeah, I think so. I think they've got quite the favorable schedule. I mean, they don't necessarily play anyone tough. On anyone tough they get at home, which is easy for Charlie Strong to really coach that team up and prepare them. But it'll be interesting how they see like how they do in the big games when it really matters. And
we won't see them have a real test until the bowl game, most likely. I mean, they should run the table easily in their conference.
Just like what was it? It's just a few years ago, Houston. I mean, they didn't really have much of a challenge, and they just won games. One game pretty easily, but it just wasn't much of a struggle for them. I mean, a couple other quarterbacks, obviously Sam Darnold out of USC, the guy who led USC to a 9-0 run to end the season out of nowhere. I mean, he's got already hyped up.
People are saying he's going to be the first overall pick already. They haven't played
hyped up by some as the best player in college football, the best quarterback in college football. I mean, he's got great accuracy. He's composed in the pocket. He's got that kind of unorthodox release. But, I mean, he gets the ball where it needs to be. I mean, just a few stats. I mean, he had 29 touchdowns during that span where they were 9-0. Only had 7 picks, which is really impressive. What I'm interested to see is, can he pick up where he left off? Can he keep up the hype and get USC back to the MADELINE days, the Reggie Bush days, where they were just at the top of everything? And, I mean, another guy we have to mention, obviously, Mr. Baker Mayfield.
Baker Mayfield.
In my opinion, the best quarterback in college football.
When you talk about consistency
over the last 2 years, no one's been more consistent than Baker. I mean, he's literally set a record for accuracy with 70.9% of his passes completed. That's the NCAA record. It stands right now. And when you think about it, it's crazy how much he makes other players better. That's what I love about him so much. And
he's a playmaker.
He's a playmaker. He's a natural leader. He's got all the intangibles that you need to succeed. I mean, he's a competitor. The TCU game where he ran for that touchdown and just kept shoving that guy into the dirt. That's one of my favorite moments. I mean,
I'm really excited to see him open up this year, especially with all the questions on the offensive side of the ball. It's going to be interesting to see if Baker Mayfield can figure out who are going to be the best targets. He's got to get running backs involved. I mean, he's got to spread the field because losing D.D. Westbrook, Joe Mixon, and Samaje Perine is huge for this offense. But he's going to be behind a really experienced offensive line, and I don't see him slowing down at all.
Yeah, I'm telling you, his will to win is unlike – I mean, he reminds me of Tim Tebow. That's the only person I can think of. Because Tim Tebow, that season where they started off slow, lost to Florida, I think, and he went to the press conference and he told people, you're not going to see a team work harder than we do. You're not going to see a team want to win more than we do. And they ran the table, won the national championship. And I don't see someone like that. Baker reminds me of that. Because after the Ohio State game, he said, you won't see a player work harder than I do. You won't see a team as motivated as we are. And then they ran the table.
And he has his whole team behind him. Everyone is ready for Baker Mayfield to lead OU this season. I think that he's going to have to turn it on quick because everyone's going to be looking at him to perform. He's got a huge chip on his shoulder because everyone's been doubting OU all summer.
I mean, you should have seen College Gameday the other day.
Kirk Herbstreit said Richard Lego and those wide receivers were the best.
That Ohio State's going to play all
and they'll play Baker and Trace McSorley.
I thought that was interesting that you said that.
How can you say the two-time Heisman finalist?
And I mean, on College Gameday, too, Lee Corso called OU pretenders, and you can't tell me Baker's not going to take that to heart. He's out there to prove every single person wrong.
Sure.
He said it in the interview with Brian McGee, the profile on E60. He said, I believe in myself. If you don't believe in me, I couldn't care less. I mean, he wants to win. He wants to prove everyone wrong. And I can't wait to see him honestly give it a shot.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see Lincoln Riley as the new head coach. Speaking of some other new head coaches, though, we got Lane Kiffin and Charlie Strong both in new positions this year.
In Florida.
What do you guys think about these two coaches?
Charlie Strong is in a pretty good spot right now. He'll be able to take a team that won't have to play anyone tough, really, and they'll look good all season. He can mold that team into whatever he wants. He's got Quentin Flowers, again, just one of the most dynamic players in college, and I'm excited to watch USF play. I mean, they're fun to watch.
Yeah, it seems like they're in a good spot. I'm honestly surprised that his tenure at Texas went the way it did. It seemed there was so much talent there and so much recruiting. It just never panned out for them.
Right. Only one bowl appearance, which they lost.
Exactly, and I mean
lost to Kansas.
Yeah.
Lost to Kansas last season.
Yeah, it just seemed like they didn't. It just seemed like they didn't want to play out there, and obviously boosters took that to heart. And you can say you can
his team not want to play for him.
You can think about whether that had a role or not, but I mean, Charlie Strong's not there anymore, but he's in a really good spot at USF, like we said, a dynamic quarterback in Quentin Flowers. Was a really good dual threat. Didn't show up as much as you'd think against San Jose State the other day. Only completed like 47% of his passes. Only put up 3 touchdowns, but it's a defense like that. With a player of that caliber, you'd expect more. Lamar Jackson put up 8 against like Charlotte. Charlotte's about the same caliber, so. But it's interesting to see. Like we said, their schedule is pretty favorable. They don't play a lot of tough teams on the road. It seems like the hard games will be at home. But the big moments are going to be what defines this team because they won't face a lot of them. So they have to make the most of their opportunities. And if they want to be a dark horse group of 5 team, they have to show the College Football Committee that they can hang with the big guys.
I mean, I think a big difference between USF and Texas is that Texas was coming off a bad season when Strong took over. But USF won a school record 11 games last year. So they're in a good spot, and I think that'll really be the difference.
They've got a lot of returning players, too.
Yeah, for sure.
Lane Kiffin starting at FAU. They lost last night. They lose to Navy, right?
42-19.
That is not a good start for that team.
It didn't look good. And ESPN said it themselves. They said that you won't hear much about Lane Kiffin after the first 2 weeks because they're just going to drop 2 games and go 0-2. And like, all right, no need to worry about this story anymore.
What are people really expecting from Florida Atlantic anyway, you know? I mean, I don't think people thought that they were going to do anything close to what USF is projected to do, but Lane Kiffin's name is always a name that gets a ton of national attention. And if his team's not winning, no one's going to care.
I mean, a lot of people have said this is his last chance as a head coach. The talent is there. Everyone knows that the talent is there. You ask Nick Saban, they say he's one of the smartest guys he's ever worked with, but it's just the character issues that are there. It's the unwillingness to work with someone. He can develop players unlike anyone. He turned the quarterback for Alabama, Blake Sims, who used to be a wide receiver, into a national title caliber quarterback. That's not a coincidence. He's got the talent. It's just the issues are there, and it'll be interesting to see what he does. We thought DeAndre Johnson was going to be the quarterback. It turned out to be Daniel Parr, who did a solid job at quarterback. Only completed 19 for 30, 281 yards and 2 TDs and a pick. And then DeAndre Johnson had some time, completed 2 for 3, 5 yards and an interception, and then picked up 31 yards on the ground. So I don't know what the solution is for Florida Atlantic right now. I don't think Lane Kiffin knows either. Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how the story plays out.
All right, well, switching gears to the Big 12. There's a title game this year.
Finally,
again.
It's back.
Yay. What are your thoughts on that?
And it was something that the Big 12 is desperately needed.
Desperately.
It'll be fun to see 2 teams potentially play twice. I mean, OU will play OSU in November, and if they're both in there again, I mean, it's tough to beat a team twice, and it's tough to beat a team twice that you're so familiar with. Mm-hmm. So OU having to play any team twice, I think, will be tough. But having the Big 12 title game makes the Big 12 a legit conference again. People look down on us for not having a title game, and I think that's one of the reasons that, like, College Football Committee has been tougher at putting Big 12 teams into the playoff. Yeah. But having the other game and a chance for another quality win on whoever wins the Big 12's conference championship, it will just look way better for them.
Yeah. Like you said, it's huge for the Big 12 just because this is how they show the College Football Committee that they've got quality wins on their resume. The winner of the Big 12, should it be OU or OSU, is going to have one win against the other team, I believe. I think at least. And the only thing that's worrying is like some kind of buyer's remorse situation where both teams lose like one non-conference game. Say OU and OSU play the first game and OU wins, or OSU wins at home, but then OU wins the Big 12 title. All of a sudden, each team is going into the playoff with 2 losses. And all of a sudden, the Big 12 title game doesn't matter as much anymore. That's the only thing that's worrying, but that's also a schedule issue. But it's just going to be huge for the Big 12 just to see if they can really take advantage of this opportunity, because if there was a Big 12 title game last year and OU had played in it and OU had played like they had all this season and they had all conference season long and they had won, I think they would have been in the playoff. I think they would have been in the playoff over Washington. But it's going to be huge. It's going to be huge. It also allows for dark horses. I mean, you talk about guys like Texas under Tom Herman this year and Kansas State.
Yep, Kansas
to kind
State.
of come out of nowhere. Kansas State's a really big underrated team. And people say TCU. I don't think it's really going to happen. I think people overhype Kenny Hill a little too much. But, I mean, I think the Big 12 right now is 3 teams. I think it's OU, OSU, and K-State. And it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out because OU plays both OSU and K-State on the road.
Yeah. This is the most excited I've been to see just how the Big 12 shakes out in a really long time.
It'll be interesting to see if for some way, somehow it turns into that triangle like it was with OU, Texas, and Texas Tech, where like OU beat Texas Tech and Tech beat Texas and Texas beat OU. And just to see how that triangle plays out, that'd be something to see. And the first year back of the Big 12 title game, that'd be something.
Yeah. All right, well, we're going to go to a break, but we'll be right back. Stay with us.
Yes, Claude?
Welcome back. So, guys, today we've got OU UTEP, OU's first game of the season. What do you think of UTEP's team? What problems do you think they'll give OU today?
I think on the rushing side, and Kyle, you'll talk about the running backs, I think they have a chance to cause a little bit of trouble for OU. You talk about a guy that I wanted to bring up, Will Hernandez, the All-American left guard, who's a really strong, punishing runner. He lacks a little size at 6'3", but weighs 330, makes up for it in strength.
That is a big boy.
He is a big man. And he's gonna have his hands full too. He's got to deal with Neville Gallimore and Matt Romar right on the inside today. But you talked about their big running back, and he's going to be paving the way for him.
Yeah, this will be a big test for Will Hernandez. I mean, blocking against OU, he's an All-American right now, but he hasn't played one game this year. So we'll see how he really is at playing left guard. I'm going to talk about Walter John Jr. and Kevin Dove. They're 1-2 punch in the backfield for today. They're kind of like thunder and lightning a little bit. I think Walter John Jr., he's a speedster. He returns kicks. Last year, in a 5-overtime game, he scored 3 TDs.
5 overtimes?
Yeah, he found the end zone 3 times. And then Kevin Dove, 6'1", 245, 250. Dude is going to run straight up the hole all game. And behind Will Hernandez, that'll be tough. OU's going to have to tackle well all game.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think the person to watch for UTEP is their quarterback, Ryan Metz. The guy's a playmaker. I think he'll give OU's hopefully improved secondary still a little bit of trouble. Last season, he completed 65% of his passes through 14 touchdowns. The season before that, before he was the starter, he was the 3rd-string quarterback, and UTEP only scored 15 points a game.
Yeah.
He comes in, they're averaging almost 40 points a game.
Wow.
So I definitely think he'll be someone to watch, and the defense will definitely be locked in on Ryan Metz.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind.
Sure.
I wouldn't mind seeing OU have to at least compete a little bit today. It's good to get out.
Good test.
Play some real strong defense against a quarterback and a running backs that are both strong.
Helps you realize who your best lineup is. And we talked about you're talking about the quarterback and the running back. They don't have many standout receivers, but that kind of helps the OU secondary because they don't have anyone proven, but at the same time they shouldn't take anyone for granted. It'll be interesting to see
if they
who
take it
steps
seriously.
up. If they take it seriously, if they take Ryan Metz seriously, they can't take his arm for granted. They can't take any quarterback's arm for granted. They have to bring their A game, and the guys inside in the trenches just have to bring it and make sure they shut down that running game. Because Will Hernandez is going to be huge. Will Hernandez is actually going to really benefit from the national scale because they play OU and Arizona this year. So we'll see how that plays out.
All right, here on Gameday U, we like to call out national either players, coaches, teams, and then an OU player or coach. So who's your national call-outs, guys?
My national call-out is anybody who has Texas ranked in the preseason top 25.
I like this one.
I think they have to play USC, which is going to be a massively tough game for them. And then later in the season, they have to play K-State, OU, and OSU back to back to back. Those are 3 hard games against the 3 best teams in the Big 12. And then they have to go into Morgantown in the second to last week in November. So you were talking about a team that could easily lose 5 games. And you're not going to be ranked in the top 25 if you lose 5 games.
Yeah.
So I don't know what people are seeing.
Well, your rank isn't based on who you're playing, the quality of your future opponents.
Well,
it's at this point
but
right
at the
now.
same time, if you want to talk about at this time right now, look at Texas right now. They fired their head coach. They're coming off another year in which they didn't make a bowl game. They lost to Kansas last year. They lost to Kansas. I can't emphasize that enough. I agree with Kyle. I don't see how they're in the top 25 with the last 3 seasons that they had. The only way I could see them being squeezed in there is the fact that they're returning a lot of players. They got an All-American left tackle in Connor Williams. They've got a developing quarterback in Shane Buechele, but who also almost lost his job to Sam Ellinger in the spring. So, I mean, I don't know. It'll be interesting. My national call-out is actually Florida State head coach Jimbo Fisher. A really respected guy, a great head coach. I'm not knocking on that. But in the big games is where he needs to be key. Over the 7 years he's coached at Florida State, he's 18-10 against top 25 teams, which is a tiny bit over 500. It's not outstanding, it's still pretty solid. But then you get closer to the top 10. He's 8-7 against top 10 teams, barely over 500, and he's 3-4 against top 5 teams. 2 of those wins came during their perfect year when they won the national championship with Jameis Winston. During the big games, Jimbo Fisher doesn't step up. And I mean, you see all the talented players that they said. Like I said, Jameis Winston, Jalen Ramsey, big players. These are big guys. Jalen Ramsey's already coming up and becoming one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL. The best young, rising cornerbacks. And it's just the talent is there and the production hasn't. They're coming off 2 straight 10-3 seasons. After the 14-0 season, and then they went 13-1 and they were embarrassed by Oregon. But then they went 10-3 and 10-3 again. Last year, all the hype was around them again. They had DeAndre Francois. His offensive line couldn't keep him up. Their defense was a little lackluster at times, and it just seems like the hype needs to become a reality. And what better stage to announce themselves as a real team than week 1 against the number one team in the country, Alabama, who's been the alpha for the last decade and a half.
They have a chance to put themselves as the front runners for the college football playoff.
I think if they win, they easily just leapfrog Ohio State and just go number 1.
Yep.
It's going to be a big game, and Jimbo Fisher has to step up.
Who's yours?
Well, speaking of Texas and living up to hype, Tom Herman is my national call-out. I want Texas to be good. I mean, it's better for Oklahoma, ultimately better for the Big 12, and I just want him to live up to that hype. So, to make that a reality. OU call-out, Sam. Who's your OU call-out?
My OU call-out is Parnell Motley, a guy who made huge strides as a sophomore cornerback. Wasn't expected to have the starting job. Jordan Parker did a great job filling in and finally earning that job towards the end of the season. Struggled a little bit with heart conditions in the spring. We hope he's doing okay. But obviously, that cornerback job was up for grabs, opposite of Jordan Thomas, who's going to be a potential All-American this year. But Parnell Motley really showed up, really made improvements during spring training. That's all the defensive coaches were talking about. Parnell has grown. He's more athletic. He's gained some weight. He's gained some muscle. He's making plays all over the field, and he won that job. He won the starting job on the official depth chart the other day. So my call out is Parnell Motley because he needs to prove that he's the starter. We haven't seen him. I don't even know if he's played a snap for OU yet, but all of a sudden he's the starting quarterback, and he needs to prove that he is. He needs to prove that he's that good.
I'm sticking on the defensive side of the ball and just going with the coach for the defense, Mike Stoops. OU's defense should be very improved this season. They're returning a lot of players. Jordan Thomas, you said, potential All-American. Caleb Kelly, Obo's back. There are a lot of players on the defense that can make plays, and in the Big 12, the defense is going to really have to step up, and Mike Stoops' head's going to be called for if OU's defense is as bad as they were last season. And hopefully that defense is making strides because it's all on Mike Stoops' shoulders now.
You think Stoops is gone if their defense doesn't measure up this year?
I thought he might have been gone when Bob left, but he's here, and I'm still excited about it. I love OU's defense, but
I love the 4-3.
They have to perform.
I think the 4-3 is going to be huge for them. I think because of it, Obo is going to step up and become one of the top pass rushers in the country, not just the Big 12. I think it's going to be huge for them.
Yeah, I'm calling out Obo Okoronkwo. I think that defense really is anchored in him. I mean, it'll just go as far as he takes them. All right, guys, what's your final word to describe what you think this game will be like today?
My final word is prove. And it's kind of based on the depth chart that was released last week. We talked about the fact that there's no true starting running back yet. If you looked at the depth chart, it said Abdul Adams or Rodney Anderson or Marcellus Sutton ranked in alphabetical order. I mean, there's no starting running back yet. Someone needs to prove that they're the starter. There's no starter between Michael Jones and Tease. Someone needs to prove that they're the starter right there. And then, like we said, Parnell Motley needs to prove that he's the starter, that he needs to solidify that job over Jordan Parker. I think that there's a lot of players who have something to prove. And this game, OU is supposed to run away with this one, but it's going to be a huge test. They can't take this lightly. It's a huge test for those players who need to show that they deserve to be the guys that are going to be out there week 2 when it really matters against Ohio State.
Do you think it helps players be motivated when they have to fight for that starting position, or is it better just to say, I'm the starter?
I think it helps them. I think it also helps the backups. I mean, just because there's the depth chart that was released last week doesn't mean it's going to stay that way for the rest of the season.
Yeah, these players are competing every single day at practice, every game they play, every time they step on the field.
And that's what Lincoln. Yeah.
OU's so talented. There's always somebody else who can step up. So all the players who are starting now have to perform if they want to keep that.
And that's what Lincoln Riley preaches. That's what every coach preaches. Every day is a competition. Don't just assume that your starting job is yours forever. It could change in an instant.
All right, my final word for today is pumped. I am pumped football's back. I'm pumped to watch the Sooners back on the field again. I'm pumped to watch our offense and our defense. I think this is going to be a huge year, and it all starts today.
All right, my final word is sample. I think this game is just a small sample of what we're going to see from this team this year. You said you think it'll be a hard test. I really don't think that.
No, I don't think it's going to be a hard test. I think it's going to be a test for those who...
Yeah, okay, for those players. Yeah, no,
who haven't quite solidified their spot yet.
Yeah. And also with the word sample, I mean, we're sampling the different players in those positions, in those starting positions. So hopefully it'll be a good test for those.
First sample, Lincoln Riley as a head coach,
yeah,
too.
First sample is Lincoln, yeah, for sure.
First sample, the 4-3. There's a lot to sample from.
All right, guys, what's your final score prediction for this game?
My final score prediction, I'm going high scoring. I'm going to go 59-13 OU.
Man, I went 55-10. That's pretty close.
The way I think of it, they're going to put a couple touchdowns early, and then after that, it's going to be the backups and the starters really solidifying their spot. I think the offense is just going to go crazy. And guys like Marquise Brown, who aren't starters yet, guys who haven't solidified their spot at the running back position, are just going to try and prove that they're the starter, and they're just going to score touchdown after touchdown after touchdown, just all over this UTEP defense, who's a very weak defense that OU could easily take advantage of. And I think the defense will do pretty well.
I'm hoping to see Kyler Murray a little bit today, too.
Yeah, you never know. That'll be his first official snap in a Sooners uniform. So.
All right, my final score is 66-17. I know Obo Okoronkwo wanted a shutout. I don't think that's going to happen. I think pretty soon in the second half that the backups will start coming in, probably give up some points, but big win for the Sooners as well.
Oh, I can't wait.
Yeah.
It should be good. All right, well, thank you for watching us on Game Day U. Stick around because our other crew will be in here after the break.
Well, welcome back. Sorry about the technical difficulties. As the retired now Bob Stoops would say, we did not execute well. I'm going to miss him saying that, really. I don't know.
Yeah. But, way to plug that in there.
Well, get us back in the flow. That was good.
It's exactly what last season was about. I think we heard execute probably 1,000 times, give or take 1,000. So, yeah, it's been a long summer, but we are back. We are now in the studio again. Sorry for the technical difficulties, but we are on the roll right now. We'll begin again.
Let's talk some football.
Yeah,
come on.
Let's go. And the football we're going to talk about is transfers, because we just transferred from a building a half mile away to a building here. So let's go ahead and break this down. Carson, take it away.
Yeah, so like I was saying earlier, Will Greer is my transfer to watch for. He was 6-0 at Florida, had a great start, had them poised for a great season, then gets busted for those PEDs. Which, like I said, didn't know he was taking, which is just a bonehead.
I don't think you wanted anybody to know.
Yeah, that's what he said.
The only one.
That's what he
If I
said.
don't know, no one else will know.
Plugging him into that West Virginia offense with Dana Holgerson, who is such an offensive-minded kind of guy, I think he's just going to flourish there. And I think West Virginia could really contend in the Big 12. They're already a top 25 team. So with Will Greer, they could be, who really knows how good they can be? But I think they're going to be pretty good.
I like that one, but I'm going to go with the guy we're going to see actually today in action across the street, and that's Jeff Badet, a guy who comes in here from the SEC, from Kentucky, is a guy who can fill the role of D.D. Westbrook. I mean, last year, he was the guy. Now, Jeffrey Mead has talked about being the guy, but is he good enough to be the guy? We don't know yet. And I think Jeff Badet's going to be a key player for this team. I mean, coming off of a big season, 670 yards, 4 touchdowns last year at Kentucky, I think his role at OU is going to be much bigger. And I think OU needs a guy like that, a guy of his size, a guy that can, replace Dede. And so I'm excited to watch how he does here.
Yeah, he was definitely that guy for Kentucky. Hopefully he can be that guy for
He's
OU
fast
and
too.
for Baker Mayfield. My guy, I switched it later in the week, would be Kyle Allen, him transferring from A&M to Houston, finally getting a chance to show off what he can do. He only had 33 touchdowns in the 2 years he played for A&M, but he was very consistent, very poised, and did not turn the ball over that often. But the difference from him that happened between him and Greg Ward is Greg Ward's a different type of quarterback. He's more versatile, he can run, and he can pass, whereas Kyle Allen more is just in the pocket type QB. So I'm excited to see how he connects with this Houston offense. and excited to see what he can do for the program.
Okay, and sorry about this, my producer in here, but I did have this laid out for who I was going to talk about for our transfers, which is Kendall Sheffield at Ohio State. Big thing about this Minimum video for him because he played at some community college at Blinn, Texas, so God knows where. But this guy is phenomenal. He already had his first game with Ohio State against Indiana, which we saw was a little shaky for them.
Early,
yeah, Thursday game. But he did have 7 tackles on the game, leading the defense for Ohio State. So that is a big key. This kid is phenomenal. When he came out of high school, he was the top 3 when it came to cornerbacks in his class. And he was a 5-star recruit unanimously. So he was in Alabama. He didn't get playing time. But now we transferred to his JUCO college, and he came to Ohio State. So, you know,
ended up pretty good for him. There's a lot of D1 talent that comes from Blinn. I mean, every year. I mean, it's basically just the JV to Texas A&M.
Yeah. Okay. So, like, moving on from transfers, they are key elements. We've talked about this. We all know this. We've seen this in years past. We talked about D.D. Westbrook last year, breaking a huge Sooner record in receiving touchdowns in the season. So we know that they're a big deal. So let's talk about the different conferences and who we think could possibly be the one that comes up. It's a little early, but we'll go ahead and talk this out. So let's start it off.
I mean, right off the bat, ACC, a lot of people are going to pick Florida State just because, you know, they've got DeAndre Francois and Derwin James on the defense. But I'm going to kind of go with the reigning national champ Clemson to win the ACC.
I agree.
And I think it's just because there's a lot riding on Jimbo Fisher and Florida State, that there's going to be a lot of pressure, obviously. They have that huge target on their back. And Clemson's just going to kind of ride under the sunset and just kind of, oh, here we are, winning the ACC. And then in the Big Ten, Ohio State, OU's going to see them next week in Columbus. And I think they're the real deal. They did get a little bit of a slow start on Thursday, but they're going to pick it up. And I think they've got the tools to win the Big Ten. Big 12 staying right here in Norman, Oklahoma. Throughout this week, people, national people who have picked the Big 12.
Let's talk about this for a second.
People who have picked the Big 12, I've seen so many things from I mean, OSU is warranted. I get that. They're a legitimate Big 12 contender. But Joey Galloway from ESPN picked Baylor.
That's like, it's almost like a fake prediction.
Yeah, that's like, oh, I'm just going to pick Baylor in the hopes that they win, and if they do, I'm going to look like the smartest guy in the world. But realistically, that's not going to happen. Oklahoma, I'm picking them in the Big 12.
TCU.
That's more realistic than Baylor. Moving on to the Pac-12, though, USC, Sam Darnold. I'm not sold on Sam Darnold yet, but I do think USC as a whole is going to be, the best team in the Pac-12. They came on strong last year, had that good win against Penn State in the Rose Bowl, and I think they're legit. They have a shot to make the college football playoff. And then in the SEC, it's hard to pick against Alabama. Until I'm proven otherwise, I'm going to pick Alabama for 100 years. Or until I get proven wrong. So
honestly, yeah.
Those are my conference winners.
Mine's pretty similar to yours. I mean, Bama, obviously, in the SEC. I mean, how can you choose against them? Yeah. They've just steamrolled through the SEC for the last 10 years. Big 12, I'm staying here in Norman as well. A lot of weird predictions. TCU, I can understand that one a little more than Baylor. Baylor just, I mean, come on.
I'd pick Kansas State or West Virginia over Baylor.
Honestly, I would pick either one of those teams, like Dana Holgerson, West Virginia team.
I'd pick Tech over Baylor.
I would too. I mean, honestly.
No one wants to be a Baylor right now.
Don't say Kansas. But anyways,
hey, Texas.
I think Baylor just doesn't have a chance. I mean, they're like in a rebuilding stage right now with all the things that have happened to them. Mm-hmm. Winning the Big 12, I think, honestly, is the last thing that they're gonna do. I see USC in the Pac-12 as well. I think last night showed how overrated Washington is. I think they have a lot of talent, but they lost a lot of good guys. You have Budda Baker, John Ross. I think Browning is an overrated player as well. They struggle with Rutgers. I mean, Rutgers is a terrible team, and they struggled badly with them. So I think USC is going to win the Pac-12. I got Clemson as well in the ACC. I think Clemson is going to rebound after last year and continue what they were doing. I mean, Dabo Swinney's a great coach.
He might be the best in the country.
He's one of my favorite coaches in the country. I think he is going to continue that team. He loses Deshaun Watson. That's fine. I think this team's going to continue on. And Big Ten, I'm going Penn State. I think this team, Saquon Barkley.
You think they'll continue their streak?
I honestly do.
I had a target on their back this year, though. After that, I mean, it was like last year, no one really expected that. So
a lot of people were really, annoyed that they weren't in the college football playoff after beating Ohio State,
winning the Big Ten.
I think Ohio State showed last night that they're not as good as people may think, and I think we'll find out next week when OU heads up there to play them if they're as good as people may think. But I think Penn State has a real chance to get out of the Big Ten and win it. I mean, Michigan's going through rebuilding as well.
Yeah.
A lot of new guys. They lost 10, 11 players to the draft last year.
Michigan State's, kind of taking a hit.
All the powerhouses are kind of in that rebuilding stage. So I think Penn State, it's their time to really jump ahead.
All right, I'm going to start off with the SEC. You know, as much as I would love to say another team because I'm just not a huge Bama fan, I don't see anybody beating Alabama unless somehow LSU has produced a quarterback. But if they haven't,
we're still waiting on that.
We're still waiting. That's all they need to do for like a decade now, and have not been able to do it. So Bama, I think, is going to take the SEC very easily. Going over to the Big 12, I think y'all agreed, and I agree as well. I think the Sooners are going to take it very easily. I think the only team that competes with them in the Big 12 is Oklahoma State because they are possibly the most mature team in the country, and that plays a factor in everything. But when you have a great offensive line and a great quarterback like the Sooners have this year, it's hard to beat them. Yeah. In the ACC, I disagree with both of you. I'm picking Florida State. I am going to jump on that bandwagon. Wow. I am a huge Florida State fan. I love the way they're coached. I love watching them play, and I think Francois, even though he wasn't that consistent last year, he's really developed. And if you see the way he's put on weight and put on muscle, he's prepared. He's worked really hard in the offseason. I'm excited to see him. In the Big Ten, you picked Penn State. Obviously, we never agree. I'm picking Ohio State. I think they're going to take it. I think they're going to make the playoffs. I think if they suffer one loss, it's probably OU. Other than that, I think Penn State's good, but Ohio State's so athletic, and they always are. It's just hard to go against them. And then Pac-12, USC. I think that they're going to continue their hot streak. They left off really good, and I think they're going to start really great. I think they're going to suffer a loss at some point, which is going to hurt them playoff-wise, but I think the Pac-12 is theirs for the taking.
Yeah. See, I'm going to go ahead and start with the Big Ten here because this is an interesting thing here. The Penn State, they're going to play Ohio State and Michigan back-to-back. Michigan, we're going to get into that later in the show of how their team is a skeleton of what they were last year. But that's besides the point. Jim Harbaugh is Jim Harbaugh. He's the most eccentric man coach that we have to see right now. So you really can't predict that. But as far as it goes, they're a good team. They don't really have much standing in their way besides that point. So those two teams alone, I could see them actually pulling through there. I mean, I feel like that's almost a coin flip. It's a coin flip seeing if they can beat Ohio State with the way they struggled this first week. We are still saying this is way too early. And at the same time, it's a coin flip because we don't know what Michigan is yet. So we'll go from there. Pac-12, USC, I'm not going to get into it. Come on, guys. This is like almost like a no-brainer. I have no idea why. But other than that, SEC, Alabama, ACC, I'm going to go with Florida State. And Big 12, we do have a little bit of disagreement here. I've got to be the contrarian
Don't
here.
say Baylor.
No, Baylor, come on, guys. When they told me the story, I could not believe that that was the actual thing, but I'm going to go with Oklahoma State. The reason why is because the championship format they're going to have with the Big 12 this year. They could lose in the regular season to OU, but at the same time, Oklahoma State does not have a very hard schedule to start off the year. Their first 8 games are going to be, well, against the bottom tier of the Big 12. So you can't really say that they're not in prime position. I mean, it's the whole reason why the people decided that we're going to go ahead and play OSU and put them with OU 4 weeks earlier than they used to, just because they don't want to see them in Dallas and Jerry's World playing again. So
they get OU in Stillwater, so that's going to be big for them.
Yeah, so that's going to be a big-time move here. I think that when we go in the season, we'll see that later on, but we'll keep going from there. We have some other bold ideas besides my OSU thing here. So do you guys have any bold predictions for the beginning of the season and what we can possibly see?
I don't know about the beginning of the season, but my way too early prediction for the entire season, I'm going to say right here in Norman, Baker Mayfield finishes top 5 in the Heisman again, becomes only the second person to do it for 3 years. The other one was Archie Griffin, who was the only man to win it twice. And after that, I think he becomes and is deemed OU's best quarterback of all time. And you're going to see possibly a statue of him out there at Heisman Park. And he's going to go down as maybe one of the rivaling Tim Tebow as one of the best college quarterbacks of all time, too.
I mean, I could see it, too. I mean, the guy is just electric.
He has the it factor.
I'm going to stay in Norman as well, and I'm going to say Rodney Anderson will be a Heisman finalist this year as well.
Whoa, wow. That's a bold prediction.
That is a bold prediction.
That's more than bold.
He's the first Heisman winner to be listed as an or on the depth chart.
We don't even know if he started yet.
Greatest quarterback of all time at OU?
Maybe.
That's a pretty bold prediction right
Who
there.
Who else has ever finished top 5 in the Heisman?
That's true.
And how consistent he's been throughout his career.
And as a walk-on,
they probably already have a statue made. They probably prepped it 2 years ago.
They love Baker. I think Rodney, I mean, I have been excited to watch him play for a few years now, and he got hurt, against Tennessee a couple years back. Got hurt again last year. Watching him in high school, I remember watching him on TV when he was playing the state championships in Texas from Katy. he looks like Adrian Peterson when he runs the football. He's a dominant back. I think he could be the guy that OU needs this year to take over and be the #1 running back. I think he has a lot of talent. I think he's a guy who can, really change games, and I think he has a chance to really, be a top guy in the country this year.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive that you were able to watch Texas State championships all the way from Washington.
Yeah, okay. I know you have Texas pride, but
yes, I do. I'm just saying. Anyways,
we get it, dude.
I guess I'm going to keep it in Norman as well. The Sooners are going to have a top 25 defense by the end of this college season.
I agree with that, 100%.
Really?
I don't.
I do.
Anyways, I think that them switching to a 4-3 is really going to be a big deal for them. It's going to allow them to get a lot more pressure onto quarterbacks, and it's going to give their safeties and their cornerbacks a little less time to have to cover, because last year we saw that the secondary had to cover 5 to 8 seconds. But when you have a 4-3 and you can blitz and get a lot more pressure on the quarterback, they only have to cover for 3 to 5. If they mess up after that, that's on them. Or if you can't get pressure, that's on your D-line or your linebackers. But the biggest thing that I love about switching to a 4-3 is they didn't do it for the Big 12. They want pressure on quarterbacks in the Big 12, but the biggest thing is out of conference, because they've struggled with big out-of-conference teams with physicality. And I think that going to a 4-3 will help them out of conference, because last year we saw when Ohio State came to Norman, they were not able to get pressure on JT Barrett. So hopefully,
I feel like it's the opposite. I feel like OU has been able to be physical against other opponents because of the fact that they play a type of offense that you can be physical. The Big 12, that's why I don't agree with what you're saying. Not because OU I think OU has the best defense they've had in years, completely. But when you play in the Big 12, you're spread out and teams just throw the ball all over. It's almost impossible to be a good defense because they're going to score so many points and run so many plays. And so it's just going to be tough to see.
Yeah, but I think they have the best secondary that they've also had in years, and that's going to give them that safety blanket on the back end to kind of be able to take chances up front.
And when you go back and look at one game specifically, Texas Tech, there was no defense. Why? Because they couldn't get pressure on the quarterback, because they were running a 3-4 and they were having to cover for so long. I think with the 4-3, it keeps your cornerbacks and your safeties from having to cover that long of a time span. And so that's why I think that they'll possibly be top 25 defense.
Okay, so when we do this, we still have some really way too early predictions, our way too early playoffs.
Oh, boy.
Okay. I've been going first. I'm gonna hand this off to you.
I kind of talked about these teams already in my conference championships. I think it's Alabama 1. I think that you can't vote against them until they prove us wrong. We cannot go against Alabama. Mm-hmm. Clemson at 2. A lot of people question why I think Clemson's going to be good this year. In 2 words, Dabo Swinney. I think he's the type of coach that can make any team good, and Clemson gets a lot of talent in. I got USC at 3. USC was one of those teams that if they had not struggled at the beginning of the season last year, they probably would have been a playoff team. I mean, they were a lot of the guys' favorite team coming into the end of the season. And I have OU at 4. I think Baker coming back, it's his time. He wants to win the national championship, and he's going to give it all this year. I think that Oklahoma has a chance to round out the top 4.
So no Big Ten teams whatsoever. Really?
They got one last year.
And we obviously saw what they did with that.
Yep.
Well, you're
torched.
Well, your Washington team got one last year as well. And
it's not my Washington team. I did not approve of that.
From your state.
I would have put other teams in there instead of them.
Yeah, I definitely know we had that argument.
Showed last night. Look.
A lot of times. Yeah, they were not that good last night. So I'm going to give my 4. I believe OU's going to make it no matter what any other analyst says, because like I said, when you have a great offensive line and you have a great quarterback, everything else falls into place. We've seen it with, I'm going to the NFL, with the Dallas Cowboys. They haven't always had the best talent, but they've had the best offensive line and a good quarterback. Second, it's Alabama. There's just nobody who can compete with them in the SEC.
You're saying OU won?
Well, this isn't in a specific order. I thought you were just listing it.
In order, man.
My bad. OU
number 1 in the nation.
I don't think they're going to be I think they'll be 2 or 3. I don't think they'll be 4. And then for, I guess, my 3rd pick, I'm picking Florida State. I'm going to stay on that bandwagon. And 5, I'm picking Ohio State. The reason I won't pick USC is what I said earlier. I think because Pac-12 teams always suffer that one loss. And I think that's going to suffer. And with their not having a strong out-of-conference, I think it's going to hurt them.
Yeah, things always go haywire late nights out on the West Coast, for sure. Number 1, Alabama. Like I said, like we've said, not going to pick against them until they prove me wrong. Number 2, Ohio State. Like I also said, they're the real deal. I think they've got the best front 7, I think, in the country, and that's going to be huge for them because, as that saying goes, defense wins championships, and they're going to be right there in the hunt for it as well. Oklahoma at number 3. I think they've got the tools they're going to need to kind of shape things up as the season goes on. All these young pieces, these new guys coming in at the different position like the wide receiver and the running back skill position guys. They're going to need to figure that out. And then Clemson at 5. You mentioned Dabo Swinney. One other name that I think is a big reason for their success, Brent Venables, who was last year's Broyles Award winner as the nation's top assistant, and I think he's maybe one of the most underrated coaches in the country, and he's got that defense playing as good as it ever has.
It's crazy that OU fans pushed him out of here pretty much.
Yeah.
It's amazing now looking back what he's done at Clemson.
Yeah, you don't know what you have till it's gone, that's for sure.
Oh, no kidding about that. Top 4. Well, we have a little bit of disagreements here, but, as expected because of the conference champions we pick. But, of course, we can't bet against Alabama. It's the LeBron James of college football.
That's a good
man.
It is. Right, you can't. I mean, 8 straight finals for LeBron James. Like, what are you going to do? You just deal with
for
it.
a trade?
Yeah, right.
It's the DeSoto of high school football.
Yes, it is.
Nice.
Of course. We'll be hearing a lot about that this year. And besides that, I'm going to go with Penn State, Oklahoma State, and USC.
Okay. I take it. I take it.
Yeah, good stuff.
As long as it's not like Miami and Stanford, like some few people picked the other week.
You don't think, like just a group of 5 teams going to make it?
No, I really don't.
Penn State.
All right, so beyond that, the teams here, who do you think, when it comes to Heisman's, has a real shot?
I'm going to say, I talked about Ohio State's defense and how good they are, but I think JT Barrett coming back, we saw what he did in Norman last year. And last night, wasn't great at the start, but things kind of started to pick up, and we saw how good, they finished. And I think they are much improved on offense, I think, from last year. And that's all going to be led by JT Barrett. And if they finish top 2, top 3 in the college football playoff standings, I think he's got a real shot to at least be in New York, but maybe win it as well.
And he's the only player ever for Ohio State to be a 3-time captain.
Well, there we go.
So big things from him.
I feel like he's just one of the most underrated players in the country. It's like he's just dominates, but no one talks about it as much.
It's like you're on one of the most popular teams, but yet you're able to fly under the radar somehow. I don't see how he does it.
I'm going to go with Baker, honestly. I think Baker is a guy to watch this year. I mean, I literally put down in my notes, is his last year his best year? I think he has proved so much these last 2 years of what he can do on the football field. I think this year, the fact that he announced early last year that he was coming back for sure, because he came here for one reason, that's to win a national championship. He grew up an OU fan, and now he's playing here. I think he's going to just leave it all on the field this year and be the guy. And, the only thing that hurts him a little bit is just his size. And, people question his arm, and people question what his decision-making, and that's what he's not that flashy quarterback like a Lamar Jackson that everybody loved watching, but he's just a guy that wins. And I think he gets it done. At the end of the day, he gets it done. And I think
that's no joke, because remember, last year after they lost to Ohio State, when OU lost to Ohio State, in the meeting, Baker, with the most sincere face and sincere expressions, was just going to say that they're going to win out, and they did that. That's a big thing. That's a big promise to fulfill as a starting quarterback. This is a town that loves their football, so saying that means a lot, and he fulfilled it. So what you're saying right there, I agree. His words really do carry a lot of weight.
He really backs up everything he says.
Well, he pulled an Aaron Rodgers from last season as well.
Yeah.
Relax.
Under Baker Mayfield, OU's only lost one conference game in the last 2 years, and that says a lot about him and his grit.
So the guy, you took mine. I'm going to pick Baker Mayfield as well. I just think he's too good, and I think he's been so efficient and so consistent throughout the years he's been here that you just can't overlook him anymore. He's been there twice already. Just give it to him. But if there's somebody that I'm going to say extra, it's going to be Bo Scarborough for Alabama. Alabama's known for their running backs. He really broke out last year. I see him having a heck of a year this season.
That's a good,
sleeper.
Yeah, sleeper pick, excuse me.
And speaking of sleepers and dark horses,
Yeah,
last one before we go to break, I'm going to go ahead and stick with Penn State. This is the beginning of a very long 12-week love affair with Penn State, but Trace McSorley, I think that it isn't something that I want to go ahead and say that he is a Heisman contender in the fullest because of the running back he has to play with. But I do think that whenever it comes to who he is, he does have a lot to prove this year because of the teams that he plays. Like, yes, last year after the 2-2 start, he did lead his team to a 9-1 record with that loss in the Rose Bowl. But the problem is those teams weren't very good. They had a combined record that was probably around the 40% mark. So, yeah, there's a lot to prove this year. There's going to be a lot of teams. They have a target on their back. But I do think if that he can do what he did on the highest stage with people on all eyes on him,
he can be in that conversation.
Yeah. None of us picked the favorite, Sam Darnold.
Hey. I think he's overrated.
I think he is too.
Same here. All right. Well, we'll come back after the break. Thank you for watching. Welcome back to Game Day U. Do you guys remember week 1, week 2, heck, the first 4 weeks of last year, how good they were?
Yeah, it was incredible.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? Well, do you guys feel like that could be the same thing this season?
Better, honestly.
I mean, like week 1.
It could be better. It may not be better, but it has the potential to be better.
I think last year's slate of games was better.
Yes.
But there is a chance this year for better drama, I think.
Week 1.
I completely agree.
Yeah, let's jump right into it because we are looking at a game that could very well be a preview of a national championship or playoff game with Alabama and Florida State. This is incredible that this is the first game of the year. They're playing in the new dome in Atlanta. And what more can I say? There's nothing else to say besides this game is big time.
Yeah, absolutely. And, kind of like what we talked about last segment, it's just hard for us to pick against Alabama until they prove us wrong. And, they've made every college football playoff so far, and they've got a great chance to do it again. A win today would almost solidify them because there's no way that they're going to slip up that many times in conference play. But they do lose a lot on defense. But as always, they just bring in guys. It's like they've got a farm system of guys to just bring in and year out. One thing I'm really excited to see, they've got a new offensive coordinator, Brian DeBall. He might try to come in and revitalize that offense because for so many years it's kind of just been stagnant a little bit. They've kind of gotten it done on the defensive side of the ball. And they've got a ton of good guys on offense. Jalen Hurts, Bo Scarborough, Ken, you mentioned that, and then Calvin Ridley on the outside, a wide receiver.
Yes.
They've got so many weapons on offense, and I think Alabama takes it.
I completely agree. I mean, I think that, for one, Bama's coming off a loss. How often have we seen that? I mean, it's a rarity that Nick Saban loses his last game of the year. So he's had all this time to prepare for them. I think Alabama takes it easily. For me, it's about battle in the trenches. I think, Alabama's defense lost 7 guys to the draft. If Florida State wants a chance to win, their O-line has to protect DeAndre Francois. Yes. There's just no question about it because Alabama is just too good physically to beat. I mean, you can't do it. I think that, coming into this game, Alabama with Jalen Hurts, and is coming in his second year, he's had all this time to get better, went to camps this summer, better quarterback now. Bo Scarborough, I mean, what a great name for a running back, honestly.
Yeah.
Just sounds perfect.
He's going to be something in the NFL, I'm seeing.
I think this is going to be a good game, but I think Alabama's going to take it easily. It's weird to me that this is the first time there's been a 1-3 matchup week 1. I can't believe that, honestly, that we have not seen a matchup this high. But it's going to be a fun game to watch.
So I'm going to disagree with you just a little bit, not completely.
You're a Florida State fan, so.
I think Alabama's going to take it, but I don't think it's going to be easily. I think this will be no more than a 10-point win for Bama. I know Jalen Hurts is good. I think he's a perfect quarterback for Bama. He does what they ask him to do.
Yep, I agree.
He's not ever in a rush. He's very poised, very confident, and very comfortable, but he's not that big-time quarterback that you see from other programs. Bo Scarborough, I've talked about him. I think he's going to be one of the Heisman contenders. He had 812 yards, averaged 6.5 carries last season. And when you got a guy like that coming back, that's a big deal. And then you mentioned Calvin Ridley. That's a guy on the outside that is a force to be reckoned with. They did lose a lot on the defensive side. That is true, especially on that front 7 area. But they have a very mature secondary, which is something they're not truly used to because that's the part of their game that has little weakness in it. But they have 2 seniors, 2 juniors on that secondary, and I think it's going to be hard to pass the football on them this season, which in past seasons has been an issue for them.
Okay, so moving on, BYU and LSU, unfortunately, that game had to be moved because of Hurricane Harvey, but the game still is going to be played. The show must go on. They'll be in New Orleans, and honestly, this is going to be a really interesting game for what it's worth. This will be the first time Orgeron's not an interim coach. This is his team now. He has all the pressure right now. And along with that, there are some really interesting points here. I'm not saying that BYU can win because last year they were really bad when it came to rushing yards, and that's something that LSU has actually been very good at. They were 114th in opponents' rushing yards allowed. So,
I think this game is going to be ugly. I mean, I watched BYU play last week against Portland State. The offense looked slow.
Yeah.
It looked out of place, completely inept. The defense allowed Portland State past the 50-yard line twice. The defense is fine, but if they can't score on LSU, it's over. And I think the game moving from Houston to New Orleans really affects the road team because, I mean, BYU, because they've had to change all their travel plans. LSU's just driving down the road to where they're playing. So I think this is going to be an interesting game to see how BYU can come down there and play. Ed Orgeron has had a full offseason to get his team how he wants it now, not as the interim coach anymore. I think this will be an interesting game, but I think LSU is going to take it easily.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I don't think this is going to be a pretty football game at all. I think LSU is just going to come out. They want to come out fast, and I think they're going to come out fast, and they're going to come out with a purpose. They've got a new quarterback, Danny Etling. Can he be the guy? That's what they've been searching for so long. You hope it. I don't know if I hope it. I mean, I hope so if they could beat Bama. But for the most part, if he can be the guy that can get the ball to their wide receivers, because they've always had good wide receivers come out of that program. So if he can be the guy to do that, and then they've got guys who is a major pick. I mean, he's a great running back. He backed up Leonard. Can he step up? How does he replace Leonard Fournette? I'm not even worried about LSU's defense. They always have a top defense, and I just don't think BYU, with a shaky offense, especially after week 1, I don't think they have a chance to go do anything to. It's
amazing some of the best receivers in the NFL coming from LSU
when they don't have a good quarterback.
And they don't have a good quarterback. Yeah. It's the one problem we talk about every year is LSU not having a standout quarterback. Every year, every top guy that comes in is going to be the guy. It never pans out. But somehow they have some of the best receivers to play in the NFL. I do not get it.
Landry, Odell. I mean, it's like
it's
where
they just keep them coming. Yes. But I think LSU is also in the same boat as Alabama because they've got a new offensive coordinator, Matt Canada. So, you know, is he going to be able to bring that offense back to life as well as with Bama? Tanner Mangum last week, didn't have a great week against Portland State for BYU, but their front seven, I think, it could give LSU some trouble. They're very physical. They got two good, rushers off the edge. But it's going to be all about Darius Guice, kind of like you mentioned. He's going to carry the workload for LSU until somebody else can emerge, whether that be their quarterback or somebody on the outside wide receiver. So I think Darius Guice is going to have a big day, despite BYU's phenomenal, front seven.
Another guy on Heisman watch, though. I think Guice is going to be a great running back.
When did he drop the Lace Darius? Because I thought it was Lace Darius Guice. Did he drop it?
I think so.
I guess he didn't like Lace.
See, I do like that you brought up the whole Matt Canada thing because, well, he's the only guy who can say they beat Clemson last year, so that's a pretty big deal.
Good for him.
So, yeah.
Maybe they can beat Alabama now.
We'll see. Knock on wood for them. And moving on, this game, Florida and Michigan, is the game that could have the most potential to be the best game of the week, or at the same time could be a complete dud because these two storylines are incredibly weird in their own regard. Michigan is bringing back literally nobody. They are one of the most inexperienced teams in the entire NFL. As a matter of fact, to say how inexperienced they are, there hasn't been as much turnover in Michigan in the last decade. The last time anyone had as much turnover, which is only bringing back 5 starters, was Arkansas in 2004. That's 13 years. And then along with that, we're all keeping up with the stuff about Florida and their 10 suspensions. Yeah. 10 suspensions. That is preposterous. 10. This game looks like it could be good on paper, but, at the same time, what are we really getting out of this?
It's definitely a lot of young guys from Michigan, and that's the biggest thing. I want to say they have at least 10 freshmen starting today. And when you have a quarterback who has yet to prove himself in Spate, I mean, for me personally, I can't depend on somebody like that. So even though Florida has had a lot of trouble off the field, I still believe they have the chance to win this football game. Frank Felipe, even though he's a freshman, he could be that person who just comes in and takes this program to a new level that they haven't seen in a while. And then let's see on the defensive side what C.C. Jefferson can do. How can he put pressure on the quarterback, especially with Spate? Spate was sacked a good amount of times last year, and with a young offensive line, with a young offense, it's not going to be too difficult to get to him, I don't think. So I'm taking Florida.
What's funny about this game, there was drama before the game even happened today. Both coaches are acting immature, not want to give up their depth chart, don't want to name us. I mean,
that's Jim
won't
Harbaugh.
even
He waited until Wednesday. I don't even understand that.
I mean, OU didn't give out their depth chart till Wednesday as well, but at least Baker Mayfield's going to be the quarterback.
Yeah.
At least Kyler Murray's going to be the backup. Seriously.
You don't have only 5 players coming back, so there is questions in that depth chart compared to Oklahoma.
Right.
So yeah.
You don't have to give out your entire depth chart. Whatever. That's fine. But at least let people know who your quarterback's going to be. I mean, seriously, we're going to be that immature. Both guys were doing it. But I think Florida's really, it's going to be tough for them. you lose 10 guys, you lose two of your top offensive guys from last year, Antonio Callaway and Jordan Scarlett, two guys who led the receiving game and the run game. I think it's going to be tough for Florida to come out of this game. I mean, honestly, I mean, you know, Michigan lost a lot of good players. Yes, we know that. Lost a lot of guys to the NFL draft. But I think they have more guys that are capable of winning than Florida does right now. And I think it's going to be one of those games that Michigan's going to run away with.
I think, obviously, both of these teams have good defenses. They had great defenses last year. But Michigan just loses so much on the defensive side of the ball. And I think redshirt freshman Felipe Franks, he got the nod. Kind of, you know, interesting to see that. I think they're going to take advantage on offense, and I think Florida gets this win today.
Wow, coming from the team that was 100 and, where was it? Let me find this again. 116th in the nation in total yards last year. That's really bad. And if you're losing that many people, I'm not really sold on Florida. But we'll keep going. A rivalry is reinstated for the first time in 11 years. West Virginia and Virginia Tech are going to square off. What are you guys thinking about this? These two teams have plenty of potential. They're both ranked.
Yeah. Sunday night game, the joys of Labor Day weekend. I'm excited to see, and I kind of talked about this already, I'm excited to see Will Grier and kind of how he bounces back after his, you know, time away from football, if you will. The defense will be fine, but can the offense carry its weight? Virginia Tech trotting out a redshirt freshman, Josh Jackson. Not really sure if there's any relation to the Suns, you know, basketball player Josh Jackson, but we will check on that and get back to you. First start in an NFL stadium. That's going to be tough for, you know, a guy that young. A couple big losses on offense for West Virginia, but they have a loaded backfield. So if, you know, Will Grier does take his time to kind of get back into the system, they can always dump it down to their running backs, and I think West Virginia will win today.
It'll be a fun game to watch, honestly. I mean, rivals. But I think West Virginia, this is their chance to finally have that year they're always predicted to have. I mean, I was listening to the radio the other day, the Sports Animal, and they're talking about West Virginia has a real shot this year with a lot of those top games, you know, OSU at home this year. Big games, they have their chance to really run the table this year in the Big 12 and compete for that Big 12 title. And Sunday's game will be the first start for them. I think Will Grier is going to be a big addition for Dana Holgorsen and the Mountaineers. So it'll be a fun game to watch. I think the Mountaineers are going to take it, though.
I couldn't agree more. I think Will Grier will be that guy for this West Virginia team. Virginia Tech's got a young quarterback, and what makes it even worse is how can he handle the pressure? But he's had to wait longer than any other player to get onto the field since it is a Sunday game. So my two questions are, one, how well does he handle all the environment and being in his first game? Two, can this be better than last year's Sunday game between Texas and Notre Dame?
Because last year's Sunday Texas game back after they beat Notre Dame.
Unbelievable.
They jumped up to number 11 and then it just went downhill.
It was insane. But, I mean, it was a great game. And so I want to see if this game can live up to that hype from last season. He's also got an inexperienced running back for Virginia Tech, Stephen Peoples. He doesn't have a lot of carries, didn't have a lot of carries last year, didn't have a lot of yards. So when you have an inexperienced quarterback and running back, it really hurts you. But he's also got Cam Phillips for wide receiver who had a breakout year. He had over 900 yards last year. He's going to have to be this kid's safety net.
Okay. Great. And as you can see, that this show isn't an hour like it was last season. It's a 2-hour format. So we're going to be bringing back some things from when the show was previously 2 hours, such as 4 downs. This is the way it works. You guys, at least Reagan and Carson know because they've been at this longer than any of us. We're going to play the game. We're going to have, really old, 22, 23, right? No. 4 downs, controversial topics, and we always go for it on 4th down. So let's go ahead and start. First down, a top 10 team goes down.
In week 1.
I'm
going to say, we kind of talked about this a little bit ago. This seemed like a good idea in theory to bring up, but when we realized that there's not a lot of top 10 teams, playing quality opponents who could upset, that kind of got washed away. But one thing I'm interested to see, and we just talked about it a second ago, Florida over Michigan. Michigan's just outside the top 10 at number 11. Florida, we just talked about, I think Florida could upset Michigan today. And I think that's one to watch out for. But as far as teams in the top 10, not likely.
Well, I mean, what I said was I don't think so at all because there's not really any trap games today. Mm-hmm. The only game that I thought had a chance to be a trap game was the Wisconsin-Utah State game last night, and it showed that almost was a trap game. I mean, they were down 10-0. I think that there's just the only games that have potential to be an upset are USC and Oklahoma right now, and I don't think either one of those teams are going to go down to UTEP or Western Michigan, so I think there's no chance.
Yeah, I completely agree. I don't see any team in the top 10 going down and gaining an upset this week at all. We've already seen half the teams play, and we saw what they did. Now you got OU, USC, who have a chance to lose, but more than likely they really don't. And then Bama is playing Florida State. I don't really see them. Yeah, you wouldn't count that as an upset?
I mean, 3-1.
Well, I mean, but still,
Yeah,
I mean, most people probably don't expect Bama to lose. So, I mean,
if it was OSU, they'd probably rush the field if they beat Bama, even as a 3 team. So, throwing shade.
So, just some names from last year: Christian McCaffrey, Leonard Fournette, Samaje Perine, Joe Mixon. The list goes on and on and on. It was the year of running backs last year with how many left. But this year, who's it about? The running backs or the quarterbacks?
I honestly think it's more about the quarterbacks this year. I think Sam Darnold, Lamar Jackson, Baker Mayfield, guys like that are really going to run the show this year. I mean, even OU's team, for example, you lose 2 of the top guys in the nation. Both of those guys could have been Heisman candidates on any other team in the country. So I think this is going to be the year we're going to go back to seeing the quarterbacks really dominate the field.
Yeah, I completely agree. Again, Baker Mayfield, he's arguably the best quarterback in the country. Then you got guys like Lamar, who is the former Heisman. See what he can do, see if he can have a repeat year. Sam Darnold, and don't forget DeAndre Francois. He didn't have a great year last year. Yeah, it is a little difficult. But he didn't have a wonderful game season last year, but he's definitely, I think, going to be one of the most improved players. Scarborough for Alabama, running back wise, will be one of those guys, and so will the kid over at Penn State. But I just don't see that many running backs really having a breakout season.
Yeah, Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, Mason Rudolph, J.T. Barrett, Trace McSorley, Lamar Jackson. Even Jake Browning. I know you don't like to hear that. And then you got Josh Rosen, Josh Allen, even with Wyoming, could be the #1 draft pick. The list goes on and on. Jarrett Stidham at Auburn. There's just a plethora of college quarterbacks this year, and they severely outnumber the running backs.
NFL teams are just like,
oh, finally, this is going to be the year.
By the way,
not a lot of great running backs. Your guy, Bo Scarborough, Darius Geis, Nick Chubb.
All the SEC guys.
Yeah, all the SEC guys, exactly. So I think it's going to be the quarterbacks for sure.
Yeah, Fair enough. Now, this one I think we'll have a little more disagreement here, and I'll let you take this because you seem to be a little bit of a Texas fan. Tom Herman, does he get this team to the top 10?
No. As much as
it
is a shock. Thank you. Did I pass the test?
Yes, you passed.
I think they
colors.
do, and I might be even jumping this, but I think they do in top 25, maybe top 20, but I don't see him making top. That's just too much of a jump too soon. Maybe next year, but this year, I mean, he still has to deal with some of Charlie Strong's recruits that he doesn't know very well, but I think if you give him a season under his belt at Texas, he'll be able to make it a year afterwards.
I completely agree. I think it's too soon. I mean, he's coming here for 1 year. Coaching at Texas is a whole new ballgame than coaching at Houston. 2 different conferences. I mean, the competition level, what Houston has had over the last few years has not been very good, other than playing OU, and they beat them. Props to them on that one. But I think it's just too soon for Tom Herman to come in here and be a top 10 team. I mean, we saw what happened last year. They got bumped up to number 11.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, so maybe they like him. The committee likes him enough to bump him up. But I think Tom Herman needs a year or 2 to get his guys in there to get to a point where they're a top 10 team.
The first chance that they're going to have to really make a big jump up the rankings is going to be at USC here in a couple weeks. That's not going to happen. They're going to get blown out. And then they've got conference games against Kansas State, OU, OSU, TCU. I think they lose all those. That many losses in conference, not going to happen.
Yeah.
All right, 4th and long. We're going to go for it. Yes or no answer. Rodney Anderson, is he running back #1?
I think he is. I think he will solidify his spot today. I think he will be the guy. I think he will come out here today and show people what he's been wanting to do for the last 2 years and hasn't been able to do.
I thought he solidified it in spring and summer, and I was shocked to see that he didn't. But, yeah, I think he's going to solidify it today against UTEP.
Yeah, I do too. They're going to use 4 running backs, but I think Rodney Anderson's going to be that guy with that stout offensive line to kind of, power through and become, that solidified #1 guy.
Okay. Well, that concludes these 2 segments. We'll continue right after the break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Well, guys, if you talk OU, you talk the Big 12. You're talking high-scoring, tantalizing offensive weapons, the best of the best. Games where you see scores that could be mistaken for college basketball scores, right?
Yeah.
Well, OU has lost a lot of those weapons, and it's been one of the biggest talks on how they're going to replace that. And here's what the team had to say about that topic.
in the limited live snaps I've seen, I'm encouraged. I think we've got some guys that are going to be difficult to tackle and that understand what we're doing. But at the same time, again, we got to go see them do it. And so we'll give them some opportunities, and hopefully running behind the offensive line we have, they'll get some good ones. And I think that may be a group that we just continue to learn about and evolve as the year goes on.
For me, it's about not getting too high, not getting too low. Realizing that what the guys need on the team, what they need to expect out of me, and so I just need to meet those expectations.
I mean, every year, this is kind of the big topic, the receivers, and every year we've proven to be pretty good, and there's a lot of talent in this receiving core, and there's a lot of young guys, guys that are going to be able to step up. I'm extremely excited to see, the product that we put out this year, and I'm very confident that, everyone's going to step up to the plate and do their part.
CeeDee Lamb is a very, very talented natural athlete. He's a guy that he kind of has that it factor on the outside with the receiver. You talk about ball skills, being able to go up in the air and get the ball and attack it.
Just everyone clicking together, everyone being on the same page and playing 11-man football. And this is an offense where, one person does the wrong thing, everything doesn't go right. So just seeing that, chemistry come together and being in a game situation and everyone being calm and collective and doing their part. I think he just studies the game so well, and he's always, watching football. And I think the mental side, he's a very smart player. I don't know exactly, what he's done, but I know he's ready. I know he's prepared, and we're ready for the start of this season. So I'm excited to see how he comes out and see what he does.
Yeah, that's a lot to take in. It's going to be a different year, and a lot of that difference is going to come from the man in the head coach spot, Lincoln Riley.
That's the biggest topic this year, I think, honestly. Lincoln Riley taking over.
College football.
I was saying earlier to you guys, all I've ever known about OU football is Bob Stoops. I still can't wrap my head around the fact that today we will not be seeing Bob Stoops roaming the sidelines.
We're going to be looking for him on the sidelines, yeah.
I have called it the Bob Stoops press conference, Bob Stoops head coach, multiple times this week because I'm just so used to that. I'm excited, though. I think Lincoln Riley, I was saying to Carson this last week that college football has shifted so much to more of the player's coach is a better fit for success, meaning a coach that is more buddy-buddy with their players, more fun, not traditional, is where the success is right now. Look at Dabo Senior, for example, a guy who just gets amped up, gets fired up, pumps his team. I mean, they have a slide in their locker room now. Yeah. That type of coaching style right now, other than Nick Saban, is the one that's seeing the most success right now. And I think that Lincoln Riley can bring that to this football team.
And definitely what helped with when Bob Stoops retired is he did it at the perfect point of the year because that way recruits can't leave. They have to play for this season. But I don't think they would want to leave because honestly, these guys love to play for Lincoln Riley. And when you have players that love to play for you, no matter what their talent is, they're going to play at a higher level than they would if they were just for some random coach. And Lincoln Riley has built a relationship. You talked about it. He's buddy-buddy. That's the type of way that people like to coach now. And when you have players that love to play for you, you get the best out of him. And I think that's what he's going to get today and for the rest of the season.
He's got the talent as a head coach to coach anywhere in the country, I think. And Sooner fans are going to be thankful that they, he's stuck around here in Norman. He's got such a phenomenal football mind, especially on offense, that I think that this is just going to be a sort of extension of Bob Stoops, but in a little bit of a more fun, charismatic aura about him that I think
Stoops 2.0.
Exactly.
It's weird how, over the years we've talked about all these fans want Bob Stoops fired. And my dad, for example, has always said to me, who's going to replace him? Who's going to do a better job than Bob Stoops? And I always thought, you're right. I mean, how can you replace Bob Stoops? And this is all planned, I think.
I never thought Lincoln Riley as the next OU head coach until, a month or two
but
before
it all
Bob
makes
retired.
sense now. It doesn't surprise me at all. It's not weird. It doesn't seem too soon. It seems just perfect.
And that was the thing that Lincoln Riley never left because we all had the assumption that they were preparing him to be the head coach. But I think the biggest question isn't what is he going to do this season. It's what he's going to do when all those seniors are gone. That's the biggest question.
When he gets his own team.
When he gets his team, not just Bob Stoops' team.
And he has a lot of those decisions to make because it's his team now, and he has to replace 3 of the most prolific offensive players in all of college football last year.
Yep.
Honestly, 1,000 yards in their respective field. They led the team in virtually everything. Without them, there was no OU offense. So what is going to happen? What's going to be harder to replace, honestly? Mixon and Pirine or Westbrook?
I think it's going to be D.D. Westbrook. It's easier to get one of those 4 running backs, going on offense with that, experienced and dominant offensive line. But it's not as easy to do it with the wide receivers. They're a lot more or a lot less experienced, and I think it's just going to be more difficult. Lincoln has said he's going to use 10, 11, wide receivers today, and if that continues, it's just going to be tough for one guy to really, break out as that, main wide receiver.
I think it's D.D. for sure. I was listening to the radio again this week, and I was talking about last year. D.D. had 11 reception touchdowns.
17.
Or 17. Sorry. The next closest guy, Jeffrey Mead, at 3. That position is going to be so much harder to replace because of what D.D. did for that offense last year. I think that you can replace 2 running backs. They have plenty of talent in the backfield right now. I mean, Trey Sermon, all these, Marcellus Sutton, Rodney Anderson, Abdul Adams. Abdul Adams played last year, so he has experience. You have 4 guys right there to compete for one main spot. Receivers, you have a true freshman starting today. That concerns me. And you have Jeffrey Mead, who has been here for 4 years. This is his 4th year now. But he still has not been that guy. He's hyped up every summer, but for some reason, when season comes, he cannot be that guy for this team. So that is going to be the tougher position to replace.
See, I'm going to disagree with both of you. I think it's going to be the running back position. We've asked a year ago who was going to replace Sterling Shepard. It's the same thing. Who's going to replace D.D.? I don't think we will have a breakout star from the Sooners this year, wide receiver-wise. But honestly, I think as a collective group, this is probably one of their best wide receiver cores they've ever had. And so even though they're young, they're athletic, they're talented, and they can – and when you got a great quarterback, you're fine. And I think with that being said, you had 2 of the best running backs in the country last year. Arguably, I still believe that Joe Mixon was the best running back, even though he had to share with Pirine. But we haven't had to ask that question for the Sooners, what running back is going to be replaced ever since we've been at OU. So with that
even before.
So with that never having to be the question, now you have to ask who's going to replace him. And so I think with the production they did in the backfield and route running and hitting the gaps and being physical and scoring touchdowns, I think it's going to be a lot more difficult for them to be replaced than D.D.
Well, see, why if OU fans have never had to ask that before, who's going to fill that running back spot, why is this year different?
Because you've never had a group like that. When you think of running backs, think of Adrian Peterson, DeMarco Murray, Billy Sims. There was just one guy. There's 2 that got a lot of production out of them. You saw what Joe Mixon did against Texas Tech, which probably defensively isn't a good game to bring up, but he had 5 touchdowns. 1 was called back, so technically 6. And that was without Pirine. And then you see what he does with Pirine in. So when you have that type of duo, now you're switching your offense up to probably just having 1 back in the backfield. So I think the game plan is going to be a little different, and I think you're going to need more production from just one running back.
But you've got 4 running backs to choose from.
Yeah, but they don't have the experience,
arguably the best offensive line OU has seen in a long time.
You could just pluck any running back and let him run through a hole.
But let's talk about that, the hype about the O-line, because that's pretty indicative of how a running back will fare in the game. So is the hype real?
I think it is.
Yeah,
honestly, I think Coach Biedenbo is a phenomenal coach. But what he's done to this O-line, the fact that you have a situation right now where you have 5 guys on the line and you have about a 10 total who could play. I mean, you have a freshman in Creed Humphrey who
will likely redshirt.
Likely redshirt because of the fact that they're so deep and he's so good at a center position, but he's just a freshman. He's 18 years old. If he wasn't, he'd be a starting guy. Eric Wren proved himself last year. He'll be the starting center. Orlando Brown will be a top draft pick come next year. They have so much. Drew Samia, a guy who's been, this is his 3rd or 4th year. It's amazing how much depth they have. You have probably 3 to 4 guys who easily could be starters on any other team. They just happen to be playing for OU, who has the top, arguably one of the top lines in the country.
Let's also not forget about guys like Jonathan Alvarez and Cody Ford, who a couple years ago, they started. They played a ton of minutes. Both of them got hurt, and then the guys under them came up and never looked back.
And that's the thing that I was going to say. You mentioned 10 guys. 7 or 8 of them all have starting experience. And so when you have somebody who can literally just come in if someone happens to have an injury and just do the same thing. Or just needs to come out because he needs a water break or something. And when you have guys that can just replace them, that's scary to think about if I'm a defensive line or if I'm a front 7 or if I'm a defensive coordinator, because how do you attack that when you have one of the most mature offensive lines in the country and arguably the best offensive line in the country? It's just hard to really overcome that.
Baker has got to be loving that. I mean, honestly, we've talked a lot about Baker now, but all the pieces are just seeming to line up for him. So can he keep this Sooner magic that he's brought with him for the past 2 years alive this season?
I think he can. We talked about all the pieces that they're going to lose on offense. His, safety blanket in D.D. Westbrook and the guys behind him and Samaje Perine and Joe Mixon. Who's going to step up this year? A name that I think really should, people should keep an eye on. Hadn't been talked a lot about, but Jordan Smallwood, a big wide receiver, big target for Baker Mayfield. Had, I think, a touchdown in one of their preseason scrimmages that they had. So he's going to be another good guy. People always talk about Jeff Mead. Can he make that stride and become the #1 wide receiver? And then CeeDee Lamb. We talked about that. True freshman starting at wide receiver.
Baker's very high on him.
The first true freshman to start at wide receiver since Kenny Stills back in the day, and look what kind of career he had. So Baker's going to have enough, resources to go to, and I think he'll be fine.
And we saw bits and pieces from Jeff Mead last year. So
at
could,
Ohio State.
Yes, and at Iowa State, even though
that's what I meant.
Yeah, Iowa State. And when we saw the touchdown he had, I think we were all shocked by his athleticism. I don't think the question is, can Baker keep the Sooner magic? I think it is, how does he mess it up? Because honestly, he's got all the tools.
Good point.
He's got all the talent. He's got the ability. We've seen him do it, and now he's got the offensive line that any quarterback can dream of. A decent quarterback could flourish in this offensive program. Now you've got a great quarterback who can do it. So honestly, I just want to know if he messes it up, how's it going to happen?
It's just going to be about not doing too much.
He's the perfect example of a leader you want on your football team.
Yeah.
He's the guy that gets you hyped up. He's the guy who can be serious. He's the guy who's arguably one of the best players on the field.
Yes.
He can do it all, and I think, like you said, how can you mess it up? It's all going to be, I think for me personally, it's going to come down to how his receivers play this year. Jeffrey Mead has a lot of potential. He's a freak athlete, but can he hold on to the ball? Yeah. And so for me, it's about more Baker having to rely on other guys to keep that magic going. But I think, like we said earlier, Baker's a winner. Baker's a guy who says something and backs it up. I think Baker will have a great year. I think Baker's going to be, live up to everything he said.
So let's talk about this. UTEP's not exactly going to give OU the biggest challenge in the world just because of the nature of who they are. However, we can still kind of diagnose some possible problems that we could see that OU might have to encounter this season. So do you guys see anything? Do you see a flaw? Do you see an Achilles heel in this team?
I think it's going to be the youth. There's just so many new pieces on this team that it's going to take them a couple games to kind of get acclimated with, the speed of Big 12 college football. And that, I think that could maybe hurt early. Next week in Columbus is obviously going to be, highlighted more than any other game this year. And with that being so early, they might run into some trouble there.
I think, like Lincoln said earlier in the week, it doesn't matter who you're playing week 1. It's a week 1 game, and it's a challenge no matter what. And I think that is one of the truest things that I've ever heard, because it does not matter who you're playing week 1. You're finally not having to play against your guys. You can have great scrimmages. You can have great camp. You can be physical, you want to call it. A lot of players have said that they've been more physical this fall camp than they have in past years. But the other team does not want to hurt you like UTEP's going to want to do today. They want to beat you. And I think that today, playing another team will really test OU, will really test the youth, like you said, the running backs. They have a lot of spots that there's a lot of question marks. As Lincoln said earlier this week, when they're asked about the depth chart, he said, well, we don't really know yet. A lot of guys are still having to prove themselves. And that's going to be the biggest question, I think, today is proving themselves and finding which guys are going to fill those roles, which guys are going to be starters for next week in Columbus.
And you definitely is going to play a huge factor.
Yeah.
But I think you'll see problems with it in today's game, but I don't think it'll really affect them if they against UTEP. I think the biggest issue is them having to grow up really quickly.
Right.
Because they head to Columbus next week. And
you go from here to about here.
So you go to 0 to 100 real quick.
And like you said, this is a very important thing because you're playing a team that wants to beat you. Another thing here is they're going to try to expose you at all else. That's going to be the biggest thing, especially for these teams that really are not playing in a league of their own. So that's going to be a big thing because it's Ohio State. OU is playing the top of the top. That's going to be a big game. So
what's tough about these kind of games is, and why it's hard for you to figure out how good a team is in a week 1 game against UTEP, is you don't want to throw out all your stuff leading into Ohio State. So you don't really you still don't know after today how good your team is. You don't know what the capability is, and so that's what's tough about these kinds of games. Is it's a good chance to get on the field and get some work in against someone else except for yourself, but you can't expose all your plans.
Yeah.
And so that's what makes it difficult.
And exactly, and that just goes on to both sides of the ball. So when we still have the defensive side to cover, it's a new season, it's a new coach, and it's a new defensive scheme. That's a big deal. Nothing's locked in right now. So here's the word on those changes.
It gives our guys a great test every day, going up against the type of players that we have has really, I think, benefited us in a lot of ways. If you can get around our guys, you're going to be pretty good. So it's helped us, and I think it's put our guys on edges more. They like it. It gives them a little more freedom to do different things. Well, Matt is critical for our success. I think Matt and Neville, anytime you play any even front or odd front, it doesn't matter what front you play, you got to be good in the middle. And those guys have had really good camps. Matt's probably as fresh as he's ever been, as healthy he's been in a long time. So, I look for him to have a big year this year.
Oh, we think about it all the time. I mean, our mentality is trying to go rip at the ball, trying to get turnovers and create turnovers, and I feel like we've been doing that. They're going to basically establish a run. They're a team that's basically just going to try to ram it down your throat, and we got to be great tacklers in space, and we just got to be great tacklers in general.
It's going to be a great year. Just obviously make more plays, just give us as a D-line more freedom just to get upfield, just show that we can penetrate, get to the quarterback, stop the run. Something that, I feel like, we were successful at times last year, but this year is going to be a step up just to bring that level of pressure that we need, especially as a defensive line.
And they will need to bring that pressure indeed. This is a big season because for the longest time it was a 3-4. Now it's a 4-3.
It's going to be interesting to watch, obviously. I think it's going to be good for them moving to 4-3. That kind of utilizes Oboe better off the edge.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's going to be I would not want to be a left tackle for the rest of the Big 12 because you're going to be trying to fight that guy back all day, and it's just you're not going to do it because he's maybe the best pass rusher in the Big 12. Neville Gallimore, you just heard from him. Matt Romar, good guys inside for OU to bring pressure as well. I think Calvin Thibodeau is a very underrated coach for OU, and then also bringing in Ruffin McNeil, one of Lincoln Riley's best friends, just to kind of help solidify that new defensive line. I think it's going to be a very good unit for them.
It's going to be fun to watch. Oboe is going to be. That's what I talked to Orlando Brown this summer, and he said that the one thing that was stood out the most is the defensive line pressure. They're just tearing them up. There's so many guys on the defensive line right now that are just playing at such a high level, and you add Oboe. Oboe is a freak of nature, honestly. And then you add guys like Caleb Kelly, and you add guys like Kenneth Murray getting his first start today to help out with that. It's going to be a solid 4-3.
Yeah, we saw the way Oboe grew throughout the entire season last year, and he's only going to get better. He, like you said, he's a beast. He's just all muscle. I don't think there's an ounce of fat on that man. But the linebacking core, you have Caleb Kelly and Emmanuel Bill, who's probably going to be the voice of that team, who's leading this charge. And then secondary-wise, we didn't mention it, but their secondary is pretty mature this season. You got Stephen Parker, who's a captain. Then you got Jordan Thomas. And you got PARNELL MOTLEY, who I'm really excited to see. I saw him in the spring game, and he showed up more than anybody else on the entire team that day. So I'm excited. He earned his stripes. He proved himself. I'm excited to see what he can do today.
Okay. Well, we were talking about this just a second ago about the offense when it came to youth. And what do you know? There's more youth on this side. Young linebackers. What do you guys think about that?
I was excited to see Levi Draper play. He's a guy that comes from Oklahoma, top recruit. Fortunately, he got hurt, but all the talk has been around how good Kenneth Murray is. I want to watch this guy play. A lot of the coaches have said that he is the most physically gifted freshman linebacker they've maybe ever had that they've seen. I want to know if he's actually that good. It's going to be interesting to see it. But then you got youth and Caleb Kelly too. Caleb Kelly looks like he's a senior. He's only a sophomore. I'm excited to watch how much he's developed this offseason and plays a role in this defense this year.
Exactly, and I'm a true believer that Caleb Kelly will be one of the best linebackers in the Big 12, if not the best, because he's got that ability, he's got that athleticism. We didn't see him a lot last year. I mean, he played, but some games he didn't get a lot of playing time, which was kind of upsetting. But like you said, I want to see how he grows. I think Emmanuel Bill's going to be great for this team. And Kenneth Murray, I heard, got huge over the summer. So I'm excited to see his size and what he can do with it. He's gained a lot of muscle and a lot of muscle mass. And so I want to see how he works with it and how he holds up in his first college game.
Losing Jordan Evans, I think, is going to hurt them a little bit early as far as leadership goes. But I do think Caleb Kelly will fill that void. Kenneth Murray, you talked about, first true freshman to start at linebacker for OU in 42 years. Like you said, they are high on him. And obviously, if they're going to trust him with that, middle linebacker spot, the voice of the defense. It says a lot, and we're going to see it today.
Well, you mentioned Jordan Evans in the leadership. The one thing we saw last year after the Texas Tech game, he said, we have to be better. And he took it upon himself to do that with all the turnovers, all the interceptions he caused personally. So if they do face adversity like they did last season, who's going to be that guy to say, hey, we've got to play better and actually go out and prove it?
I think Caleb's going to be play that role this year. I think he's going to be a key component on that defense.
Okay. And last but not least, let's get really in-depth on this veteran secondary, because this is the biggest focal point that OU has had troubles with in the past. Last season, you saw what happened. It was the biggest issue they had when playing games. You brought up Texas Tech last year. That literally was the score of a college basketball game. That was a shootout. That game lasted, like 4.5 hours?
I think it may have been more points scored in that game than there were in the OU Texas Tech basketball game.
I think you might be right.
I'm pretty sure.
So, yeah, you're right. Because there's no defense. There was obviously good offense on both ends, but the reason because of that was because there's no defense.
Right.
I completely agree.
So I want to ask this question right here, because this is a very good point. We brought this up earlier in the show about how the 4-3 is kind of not really like a Big 12 oriented scheme. That's not something that you see a lot in the Big 12. It's something you see around the country, though. How do you think this could possibly affect recruiting when it comes to OU getting these defensive players? Because frankly, this might be a very attractive thing that OU can use, because Ruffin McNeil especially, this is something that he's been known for. So
I think there's a lot of top D linemen out there in high school right now. I think this is going to help a lot. I think along with that, the pressure OU can put on the quarterbacks this year is going to make the secondary look just so much better, and they're going to be thanking Obo a lot this year. I feel like Stephen Parker coming back, Will Johnson at the other safety, and Jordan Thomas, 3 guys who have played quite a bit, are running that secondary now. They're finally having some depth and finally having some guys that are more experienced. I think it was Jesse Palmer say in the Sugar Bowl last year that Jordan Thomas could be a first-round draft pick this year.
Yeah, he did.
Weird to see.
Yeah, I think that it's going to help the D-line recruiting for sure, and
no
the linebackers.
doubt about that.
I think both sides are really going to get high in recruiting. And as secondary-wise, 4-3 causes your cornerbacks to play a lot of man-on-man. So if you're a cornerback that loves to play man-on-man, then OU's definitely going to be the place that you might want to come to.
I think Parnell and Jordan will like that.
Yeah, I agree. It's also, going back to defensive line, they haven't had a good, really good guy since Jordan Phillips a couple years ago, and I think this could definitely help him out. So
yeah, that's going to be an interesting thing to play out, especially because of all the new players within the Big 12, such as Tom Herman. We got one more section left for you today's show. Stay with us. Welcome back to Game Day U. For those of you new to tuning into Game Day U, at the very end of our shows in our last segment, we do a thing called National Callouts, OU Callouts, score predictions, and our word of the day, word of the game. So how it works, we're just going to go through each one of the lists. We'll talk about a specific topic. Each 4 of us will share a specific thing. You saw that earlier in the show. And we'll go ahead and get right on into it with our national callouts. Take us away, Carson.
I'm going to go with Sam Darnold. We've kind of talked about it a lot today. I feel like we're the only 4 people in the country who are not sold on Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold, I'm going to call you out. You have to be the best quarterback in the country this year to live up to all of the expectations and all the hype. If you don't, you're going to hear from it, not only from your own fans, but from other people across the country. This is supposed to be USC's year to come back and be relevant again on the national picture. So it's on you, and if you don't do it, then that's proven. That's it.
I'm going to go with Oklahoma State. I think that The guy's up at 35, had a good game the other night against Tulsa, but I think that you have a lot still to prove. I mean, you have a good offense. Yes, we know that. You have James Washington, probably the best receiver in the country. But can you win in the Big 12? Can you beat teams like OU? Can you beat teams like TCU, top teams in the Big 12, and actually finish your season? That's my biggest question. I'm calling you guys out.
You know, I'm going to do a coach. I'm going to call out Tom Herman because there's a lot of hype around this guy. He didn't get a lot of time. Charlie Strong didn't get a lot of time at the University of Texas. So, Tom Herman, I don't expect you to have that much time either. So, you got to get it going. There's a lot of hype around you coming to Texas after you said that you loved Houston after the win over OU last season. So, for you to transfer and go to Texas, there's a lot of hype. And I know we said that you won't be a top 10 team this year, but you definitely better finish in the top 20, 25, because if you don't, boosters are going to want to have your head as well.
Ooh, okay.
Fired.
Well, since we're talking about boosters, heads, and people who might be gone, nah, that's a little too bit of a stretch. Lane, I'm calling you out, and you didn't even win the game. I expected to come into this Saturday talking about a 1-0 team, but no, I'm talking about a 0-1 team. Come on, man. Look, you have a lot of expectations. You have to step up. So that's all I'm going to say right now. Don't disappoint me next week. But yeah.
Probably will.
Hey, and I just want to talk about this real quick on the Texas recruiting side of things because it is an important thing. Last year, I swear, in the springtime when we were all just looking at our phones, we just randomly see an OU player commit to Texas. They just randomly flip. So just to give a little quick tangent, how much do you think Tom Herman being a part of the Big 12 is going to play into OU's recruiting?
Well, he has ties to Texas already.
Right.
He was there before. And so I think it's really going to play a huge factor because Texas is known for their recruiting when they had Mack Brown. And now that you have somebody who already had ties coming back, we've seen him already take recruits from other schools like OU. So I think it's going to play a major factor with him being there. And
he's that upbeat guy. He's that fiery kind of coach. He's going to attract guys no matter where he's at.
Right.
And I think that it's not going to affect, but then Lincoln Riley is doing the same at OU.
Of course he is.
I don't think it's going to affect OU as much as maybe it would have if Bob was here. I think that having Lincoln here, a young coach, along with Tom Herman, another young coach, it really kind of balances it out.
And there's something about Tom Herman that just distills loyalty. Even though he left Houston and went to Texas,
he hates the media.
He took everyone with him, you know, so it's just...
He just distills loyalty in players and coaching staff, so I think it's really going to help.
It's all going to matter, I think, on how fast that they become relevant again, because those Texas players, those Texas high school players are going to see, oh, Texas is good again. We want to go to this, national powerhouse and be the guys to kind of bring it back even more, and that could hurt OU a little bit, but like you said, Lincoln Riley is just as fiery. So it might not hurt us that much.
All right, so let's do this. OU call out. Let's move on. Start us off.
I'm going to go Parnell Motley. A lot has been said about Parnell Motley a lot this year as that other cornerback, opposite Jordan Thomas. He beat out Jordan Parker, who was that other, cornerback last year. I'm calling you out, Parnell, today. You've got to show us what you have been working on all offseason. The fiery play that you had in the spring game, picking off Baker Mayfield. Translate that to actual gameplay and solidify OU's cornerbacks as the best cornerback group in the Big 12.
I'm going to go with one of my buddies, and that is Jeffrey Mead, a guy who comes into this year with a lot of hype around him, a guy who's put in so much work in the offseason, working on his hands, being able to catch the ball. I mean, he had multiple one-handed catches this offseason. Can you be the guy? Can you step in for D.D. Westbrook? Can you be the guy that all the young guys look up to? It's your fourth year here. You haven't had a lot of success the first couple of years, but can you be the guy? And that's my biggest concern. I think Jeffrey Mead has all of the skills to be a top threat for Baker this year, but can he execute? He's had a lot of trouble over the years dropping the ball. He has the athleticism, he has the height, he has all of that. It's just when it matters most, he cannot hang on to the football, and that's my call out.
My call out is going to be what I've talked about a lot already, and that is the defensive line. You switched to a 4-3 for a reason, so you could get pressure, so you could be more physical. Obo, you're the leader of that D-line. You're one of the captains of this football team, so you need to instill into these other guys that will be going after the quarterback with you that y'all need to get down and dirty, get in the trenches, and you need to prove why a 4-3 is the best way to go for this OU defense.
Let's stick with that. Reverend McNeil, I'm going to call you out as well because this is a game that should be a cakewalk. There are no other words for it. It should be an easy win. It's UTEP. So this is all you got to do. You have everything lined up for you. The world is laid out for you. The expectations are high. Do not expose those flaws right before you walk into the horseshoe. All right, let's keep going. The word.
My final word is commence. Let the Lincoln Riley era commence. That's all I got to say.
I love it. My word is along with that, but it's change. Like I said earlier in the show, in 18 years, all I ever knew about OU football was Bob Stoops. And now, for the first time, we are seeing a change, handing it over to Lincoln Riley. And so that's my biggest wonder is, how is this change going to work? How is it going to help this team or hurt this team?
I should have just did my word at the same time with my call out because it still has to do with the defensive line. My word is pressure. I've said it all show. So just put pressure on them. That's all you have to do. That is your main job today. And for the rest of the season, I want to see it happen against UTEP.
I cannot stress this enough. Just deliver. Don't stumble out of the gates like we did today. Again, sorry for the technical difficulties. But if that's how you go against UTEP, there's going to be some issues. That's going to be a very bad start to the season. Let's not have any 2012 memories. All right. Score predictions. Carson?
I think it's going to be just like most first games are. OU is going to kind of run away with this. It might be a little shaky out of the gate, just kind of get things clicking. But I think OU takes this handily, 48-14.
Yeah, I think it's one of those games we see every year. OU takes that first quarter to it's going to be one of those close 7-0 games or 10-7. But I think OU's going to really turn on the Jets eventually. And I think it's going to be 52-10 OU. I think Baker's going to have a big day. I see Rodney Anderson running for over 150 yards.
Well, I think that the Sooners are going to come out and put up 14 right off the bat. I think they're not going to be less than a double-digit lead the entire game. So I'm going to call it 56-17. I think UTEP gets 1 touchdown on the starters, and then they give me 10 points at the rest of the game.
I'll give them a touchdown and 2 field goals. 56-13, that's my score prediction. It's just going to be ugly. It probably will be a game where they stumble out of the gates, but afterwards it should be easy sailing from there. Well, guys, it was a good first week. We'll bounce back. Hopefully we won't have a start like that next week. But folks, thank you so much for tuning in to the start of Season 2 for Gameday U right here. Please be sure to follow us, along with all of us, Carson Williams, Reagan Ledbetter, and Nike Adair, on Twitter, and along with our account. We also have a website this year, so enjoy the weekend where we debut the greatest sport on earth. We'll see you here next week.
College football is back.